Happy Friday, everyone. Thanks for joining us today on this edition of Business Daily. I'm Lee Ji-yoon in Seoul. We have a lot on our plate today, so let's get started with a look at the day's highlights. Korean markets wobble after Seoul made a key announcement on the country's missile defense program, sending institutional investors away in droves. It's been 2 weeks since the historic Brexit referendum, and we take a look at the latest developments in Britain and how they are going to affect the global economy. These stories and more coming right up. And with that, let's now get a quick check on how the markets fared here in Seoul today. Korean shares ended lower on Friday as institutional investors sought to cash in early gains, while the market was largely affected by heightened geopolitical risks following the government's agreement with the U.S. to deploy its missile defense THAAD system to Korea, spooking investors. At the closing bell, the benchmark Kospi dropped over 0.5% to close at 1,963.1, while the tech-heavy Kosdaq also slipped 3.35 points to finish at 692.6. On the foreign exchange counter, the local currency lost ground against the U.S. dollar, ending at 1,161.8. In its monthly report on economic conditions, Korea's finance ministry says that domestic demand is showing signs of recovery while employment and production remain sluggish. The ministry's so-called Green Book released on Friday cited Britain's recent decision to leave the EU as an uncertainty that could further slam the brakes on improvements in economic sentiment and the pace of job growth. Retail sales in May rebounded from a month earlier, rising 0.6% on month, thanks to government measures, which included lower consumption taxes and the designation of a temporary holiday. The figure had dropped 0.5% in April. Mainly on the back of the service sector, the number of jobs also rose on year in May, but the sluggish pace of job creation in manufacturing left the overall number of new jobs added in the 200,000 level. And facing the risk from Brexit, Korea's finance minister has pledged to keep a tight rein on the country's foreign reserves, which he calls are the country's last resort. Speaking at an economy-related ministers' meeting on Friday, Yoo Il-ho said Korea needs a stronger buffer to counter external volatility. Korea's FX reserves were at $370 billion in June, and the world's seventh largest as of the end of May, following countries like China, Japan, and Switzerland. He added that the government will take preemptive measures against the market volatility while emphasizing the need to cooperate with other countries to minimize the negative impacts stemming from Brexit. One of the 5 main sectors that the government plans to foster as a growth engine is gaining extra attention here in Korea. The spotlight is turning to virtual reality, a fast-growing industry which incorporates advanced technology and content. Ari Kim Ji-yeon has this report.
The government's plans to foster the virtual reality sector is focused on creating a sustainable ecosystem where VR content and platforms can be applied into a broad range of sectors. Currently, the technology is seen solely focused on providing VR devices and hardware, while its application is yet to reach the average consumer. VR is mostly applied in areas of defense and manufacturing, mainly in the form of business-to-government or business-to-business transactions. But the Ministry of Science, ICT, and Future Planning is trying to change that in 18 months by establishing a fund of more than $34.6 million to boost the VR sector and the advancement of related ICT technology such as ultra-high displays and 5G internet connectivity, which is necessary to further develop VR. Also, the ministry says companies will be able to file for tax deductions of up to 30% of their R&D when they're used for VR tech development. The ministry says its plan will greatly promote the convergence of VR with other fields. Some of the promising areas include the gaming, sports, and tourism sectors, with the development of 360-degree video animation content for users with VR headsets dubbed head-mounted displays. Starting 2017, the ministry says it will promote the application of VR content into even more areas, including education, construction, medical services, and commerce. To do that, the government says it has designated the digital media city a state-of-the-art entertainment cluster in Sangam-dong, Seoul as an infrastructure hub for VR tech companies and a VR theme park. It's also the location for the first Seoul VR festival slated to be held in October this year. Kim Ji-yeon, Business Daily.
And turning to the ongoing investigation into Korea's fifth largest conglomerate, Seoul prosecutors are said to have placed a travel ban on key members of Lotte Group's founding family as they broaden their inquiry. Our Kim Jong-soo has more.
Lotte Group's founder Shin Gyuk-ho and chairman Shin Dong-bin have officially been banned from leaving the country. This builds on the probe launched into the group about a month ago over allegations of embezzlement and slush funds. The Seoul Central Prosecutor's Office said Friday the 95-year-old founder and his second son have each received suspicious monthly deposits of 30 billion won, or $26 million from multiple business arms starting at least in 2010. Lotte Chemical, one of Lotte Group's key units, allegedly gave illegal commissions to Lotte Busan in Japan by secretly adding the Japanese company to a deal on importing raw materials from 2010 to 2013. Shin Gyuk-ho is also accused of damaging company operations by creating additional slush funds in the course of Lotte's business deals with China, Russia, and Vietnam. Friday's decision made by Seoul prosecutors follows the Thursday arrest of family member Shin Young-ja, who has been similarly charged with embezzlement and receiving kickbacks. With that, the investigation is expected to pick up steam as only key executives of the group have been banned from leaving the country until now. Kim Jong-soo, Business Daily.
Over 380,000 tons of waste is generated every day here in Korea, which adds up to roughly 140 million tons a year. Now, there might be a lot of limitations when it comes to recycling, but add in the option of upcycling, and old goods can take on a whole new life. Our Lee Ju-young has the story.
Office worker Chu Kyung-sik recently visited a clothing store to transform some jeans that he hasn't worn in 10 years. He said he didn't want to throw them away, so he decided to upcycle and make his girlfriend an apron instead.
I would buy clothes and just leave them in the closet, so I think this is meaningful because it helps cut back on waste and preserve memories.
It's not just individuals like Chu. Companies in Korea have also started taking a different view on waste by finding ways to upcycle or reuse and repurpose old goods into something of greater value. Global chemical and materials company Korong Industries has been at the forefront in giving old materials new life. It launched its upcycled fashion line Recode in 2012, which was born out of the company's struggle with its overflowing inventory. By using outdated clothing and incorporating unwanted materials from third-party auto airbags, seats, and military uniforms, Korong said it has been able to save roughly $3.6 billion every year. The government is also playing its part in the budding industry. The Ministry of Environment has partnered up with local governments to build upcycling facilities in major cities like Seoul, Daegu, and Incheon while holding idea contests and public exhibitions. Amid all the efforts, the Institute for International Trade said Korea's upcycling market has grown from about $2 million in 2013 to as big as $8.6 million last year. It adds greater growth is expected down the line as consumers increasingly look for ways to transform their old goods into ones with better environmental value. Lee Ju-young, Business Daily.
2 weeks after Britain's decision to leave the European Union, the country appears closer to its next prime minister, who will presumably lead the country into the transition. For more on this, we're now joined by our Eunice Kim in the studio. Hello, Eunice.
Hello.
So it looks like that Britain's next prime minister will be a woman.
Right, so they're already being called Britain's next Margaret Thatcher. And Conservative Party members will have their choice between two ministers, Remainer Theresa May and Leaver Andrea Leadsom, in a vote that is to take place in August. Now, the winner will fill the post of their boss, David Cameron, as under the current parliament, the head of the Tory party is by default the Prime Minister. Here are Week 2's happenings.
From a pool of 5, it's down to 2. Standing alongside frontrunner Interior Minister Theresa May is Andrea Leadsom, a junior energy minister who, unlike her rival, had zealously campaigned for Brexit in the lead-up to the June 23rd referendum. In her pitch for Tory leadership on Thursday, which will be decided by a vote among Conservative Party members, Leadsom said her negotiations with the EU would be swift.
Trade must be the top priority. Continued tariff-free trade with the EU, continued free trade with those countries we have agreements with as a current member of the EU, and vitally, seizing the opportunities to take up new free trade agreements with fast-growing economies around the world.
2 weeks after the referendum, the FTSE 100 has settled, but the sterling continues to sway, hitting new 31-year lows. At one point this week, it fell to $1.28 against the greenback, causing investors to pull out of pound-denominated assets. In fact, 7 UK firms this week froze withdrawals from property funds, their combined funds totaling £18 billion, after analysts warned of dropping London office values, potentially as much as 20% within 3 years of the UK leaving the EU, reminiscent of plunging real estate during the 2007 global financial crisis. Meanwhile, the UK central banker has been proactive.
The FPC is announcing today that it's reducing the countercyclical buffer on banks' UK exposures from 0.5% to 0% with immediate effect. This is a major change. It means that 3/4 of UK banks, accounting for 90% of the stock of UK lending, will immediately have greater flexibility to supply credit to UK households and firms.
While keeping the economy greased with sufficient liquidity, Governor Mark Carney underlined the reach of the Bank of England is limited, that things like jobs and real wages are up to the public and private sectors and the decisions they make.
So as the sterling gets a pounding, on the other side of the globe, Japan is feeling the pinch of a strengthening yen as it's considered a safe haven asset.
Right, you're absolutely right. And, there hasn't been a lot said publicly because Japan is preparing for parliamentary elections this coming Sunday for its upper house. But you can bet officials are watching those global headwinds caused by the Brexit question very closely. Here's what Prime Minister Shinzo Abe said last week during an emergency meeting with his cabinet members and central bank governor.
The effect of Brexit on Japan's economy may appear in the medium to long term, and we need to watch it closely. It's very important to keep sending out a message that the G7 countries are doing their utmost to stabilize markets.
And the yen has gained strongly against all major currencies since that UK referendum. In fact, it has gained more than 5% against the US dollar and more than 19% looking at this year alone to trade close to 100 yen to the greenback, putting back those effects of the BOJ's monetary easing right where it began. The Bank of Japan on Thursday said the aftermath of the Brexit decision could dampen already low consumer sentiment and express concerns that this could deepen the existing deflationary mindset.
So this is probably a question that's still on many people's minds, but what are the chances of the Brexit actually not happening at this point?
Ooh, the $1 million question. Yeah, whether out loud or silently, a lot of people probably have been wondering that. Now with the most visible leaders of the Leave campaign, Boris Johnson and UKIP leader Nigel Farage resigned and out of the public eye. And tens of thousands of people have been gathering in London to protest to remain in the EU, arguing the referendum was not legally binding. It is important to note, though, that there has been no indication from any UK leaders to contest this referendum result. Neither Theresa May and certainly not Andrea Leadsom are backtracking, and they seem to be moving forward, at least on the outside, step by step to the next phase, whatever that is.
No turning back?
Yep.
All right. Thank you so much for coming in today, Eunice.
My pleasure.
And that wraps it up for today and this week. Thanks so much for watching, and we hope to see you right back here next week at the same time, same place for Your Business Daily. Until then, goodbye.